Welcome to Unlocking the Parenting Code. I'm Kathy, and this is the space where we dive into real life parenting stories. Because let's face it, raising kids today can feel like trying to crack a complicated code. Together, we'll explore the ups and downs, share insights, and swap tips that make this journey a little smoother. So grab a cup of coffee, relax, and let's unlock the parenting code together. Today, I'm excited to be with Dr. Saloni Surah. Saloni is a mother of 2 children under the age of 5, so we know she's a very busy lady. With a background in working with marginalized populations and a deep understanding of trauma, Dr. Surah brings a unique perspective to parenting. She's passionate about raising emotionally intelligent children who stay true to themselves and aren't afraid to embrace their worth. Saloni, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
Saloni, let's start with your personal parenting story and what challenges you faced, how you navigated the situation, and what you learned. It's likely that somebody who's listening to this episode later on will hear something in your story that helps them along the parenting road.
Of course. Just to give you a little bit of background, so I'm a slightly older mother. I waited quite a while to have my children. I didn't meet the right person. And for me, I wasn't sure if it was actually going to happen. And my start to motherhood was not as I would have chosen, which is a long story. I have two wonderful, very cheeky, very energetic at times little children. So I have two highly sensitive children who are very intuitive, you could say quite psychic, and it's wonderful, but it raises its challenges. Often for me, it's with childcare, and kind of getting them understood and finding the right place for them. And also what's good but also challenging is that they sometimes will refuse to go to certain people because they just know that things are off,
Mhm.
which is a wonderful thing. And I suspect we probably all were like that before it got beaten into us that, this is your grandma and this is your whatever, and just go with them. Um, so mine mostly relates to childcare. My eldest was in a nursery. We started them out late because of COVID and we were waiting to move. And I had just had my second and they'd gone up into one of the rooms and didn't really like that room. In fact, all the parents were just commenting about how it wasn't a great room and issues with the kids in the room and the staff were all a bit young. And, I'd had a young baby and I'd had birth trauma with my eldest and I'd actually had PTSD as well, which wasn't diagnosed. So it was quite I think, challenging time. It was good. I had a really different birth experience with my second. But I just wasn't happy about the room, but it was convenient and nearby. And we kind of started asking my eldest, look, is everything okay? What's going on? Because we were picking up and it wasn't a great feeling. We weren't getting much feedback. And they kind of said, oh, so and so sad, how so and so they're sad, or so and so sad and crying. We were talking about the staff members. And so we thought they were making it up, to be honest with you. We thought, look, there were two at the time, and this can't be true. Like everyone in the room can't be sad and crying. And so I feel very bad about it now because it transpired that they were, and that there was bullying going on in that room. And I didn't take it seriously until another mother said to me, "Oh yes, that staff member was seen crying. One of the other children was saying it." And yeah, so we left him there for a couple of months. We spoke to the nursery. We asked to switch key worker. It was clear that the management was off. We spoke to the management. We kept on getting assured that things were improving, this, that, and the other. It didn't. And I think in the end, I spoke to another parent and mentioned it in a play group. And that was for me, was like, okay, I'm not the only one feeling this, because I'd spoken to a couple of other parents and they were like, look, it's nurseries, this, that, and the other. And I was like, I'm just not happy with this. And I
Mhm.
know my child, I was picking them up, they were sitting on their own. And they're not the most sociable of children, but I was kind of like, why are they sitting on their own and why am I not getting this? So we did eventually move, and in that same time we started a preschool, and the contrast was really quite marked in how they were interacting, how they're socializing. It was a really different environment, so it was outdoors and it was much more for unique children. And,
Can I
so it's
just
kind of,
stop you for a minute before you move into this part?
yeah.
I was just wanting to know, like, when he moved into the other room, how old was he?
I think he was just over 2, so it was the
Okay.
first move because we'd started them in nursery. He started him in nursery older, so he was just over 2. So he was still, quite young. Speech was
Mhm.
he was his speech was good, but it's hard when they're that young to know
Yes.
exactly what's going on. And we've been happy with the other room, and it coincided with a lot of staff leaving, the manager moving, all this stuff. Um, yes. So in
So
contrast,
you made the move based on, like, you made the move because you weren't happy with the environment in the new room that he moved to. Is
so
that
so we
basically it?
actually no. So when my youngest was born, we started the preschool. Because preschool, so in the UK, preschools are cheaper. So they're kind of like school hours. They run in school term, but they're much more affordable childcare. But they only take children from when they're 2 because they don't have the little ones, which is
I see.
part of the reason. And we were going to the playgroup there, and I liked it because it was outdoors. So
Mm.
I used to, when we go to the playgroup, used to see the outdoors area, and I thought, this is what I want. I want my child outdoors, having fun. It was free play, and it was wonderful. But it was shorter hours and not in holidays. Um, Anyway, so I dug around a bit, and in the end, my husband and I decided we were going to take them out. We'd given them chances. We'd left it too long, to be honest with you. And it's one of the things we will forever regret. And so we gave notice, and we took my eldest out. And it did transpire. I found out probably about 6 months later that there was bullying in the room. Children were being sent home with dirty nappies. I actually ended up speaking to the owner, and they just said, oh, that there was bullying in the room. And I was like, well, that's not okay. I have, my child was only not being nurtured. They were in what was a toxic environment, dealing with a lot of adult emotions. And in the other preschool, once they'd moved and settled, they started having runs of diarrhea. So, obviously, what childcare, diarrhea, you've got to keep them off. So it was literally like every Friday I was having to keep them off. And then I kind of twigged that this isn't diarrhea, this is just irritable bowel, and them just shedding or clearing
So is
all
this
the stuff. Yeah.
this is one of so I'm just trying to figure out how you were able to really clue in on everything that was going on and make such big decisions. So, and often when there's something going on, something changes in our children, either something emotionally or physically, but even if you can't pinpoint the cause immediately, usually something changed. So was it the problems with his digestive system that were signaling you, or that was afterwards?
That was afterwards, and it's
Mhm.
funny, it tends to be with them afterwards. It was a feeling. So I'm also very sensitive, and it was a feeling like, but I wasn't the only one. Other parents are saying, "Oh, the rooms, it's not a very nice room." That we have seen kids pushing each other. It was a feeling, and I think for me, I'd had this feeling. I tried to ask other mums. I wasn't really getting anywhere.
Mm.
We tried to speak to the manager, and we were just being told all this stuff. And then another parent said, "Oh, yes, that staff member was seen crying." And I thought, oh gosh, actually, they were right, and I didn't believe them. And how devastating is that? And I was asking, they weren't coming home saying everyone was crying. I'd be like, how's so and so and how's so and so? They're sad, they're crying.
Mm.
Uh, and yeah, so I think kind of slowly, I found a parent who did say, actually, yes, I've not been happy about it, and went and spoke to the manager. And I think I just thought, oh no, I'm just not doing this. By that time, my youngest was a bit older, and I think there's that guilt, isn't there, that your child has been saying something,
Yeah.
and you knew something wasn't right. You didn't quite know what. If I'm being honest with you, it was convenient because it was nearby, and I was dealing with another child, and there was a lot of change too because suddenly, though, he had a sister, and
Hmm.
that's massively life changing, having a sibling. And so yes, so we did give notice, and I think we then moved them primarily to the preschool and another nursery, and the contrast was quite marked. But the digestion issue started after he moved, and I think that was probably just, he was out of that environment, and in a safe
It's, yeah.
environment, and
Yeah.
that's where it started. And um, often when they are upset, I'll notice that for
Hmm.
him it's digestive issues. And I have to often say to the nurses, look, this is not infectious,
Yeah.
it's him kind of processing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I do, if I'm a bit stressed or whatever, my gut goes off, you know,
Mm.
it's emotional.
Yeah.
Um, so that for me was a real like, wow, my child, you know, it was a real, you know, you can hold on to that guilt, but I did feel guilty for quite a while. And then I was just like, okay, I I am never going to discount what my child says to me about any childcare provider or anybody and make them go into an environment where they feel unsafe or with people where they feel unsafe. And
Mhm.
that has been challenging for me because I'll talk about the other nursery situation I had. Um, and as you know, nurseries change, staff changes, management changes. It just takes one person to upset the apple cart, like workplaces. Um, and I didn't get it confirmed to me by the owner until a year later. And I know I rang up after he'd left because somebody had said something to me, and I thought, you know what, I'm just not happy with this. I'm going to ring the owner and say, look, I wasn't happy, and this wasn't right. And I remember talking to my mum in the playgroup, and she's like, you just rang to have a go. And I was like, no, I didn't. I rang to say, actually, you're a childcare provider. You're supposed to be nurturing children. This isn't okay.
Mhm.
Um, and I can't remember what spurred it. And then you know, the owner said, yeah, there was bullying in that room. And kind of thought it was okay. And I was like, no. And they were trying to pin it on the lower staff. And I was like, no, your actual issue is management here. Like, you know, I said I didn't want a key worker because my feeling was they told me this was going to be the key worker. And I just went, no, this is not the right person for my child. They do not talk to, they don't seem interested when I go. They don't seem interested in my child. I've seen them with other parents and they're like bubbly and chatty. There's something not right here. So it's a real intuition thing. And that could be really hard to verbalize because you don't have facts and figures. It's just going on a feeling.
Did you think that
Um,
your son was being bullied, or was it more that he was very sensitive to the environment and that was negatively impacting him?
Yes, I think he's sensitive to the environment, as many of us are, and that was negatively impacting. So if you're in a room where staff are crying in front of the children, where they are bullying each other, I don't know what's happening. It's not a night, you know, it's a power play, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it's people being upset and people crying. And you know, staff shouldn't be crying in front of children in childcare, and it's not acceptable for an owner to say that. So I think, you know, for a 2-year-old, it's a lot to process. You know, he's sensitive. He knows people are sad. He can see that people are crying, the ones that he likes. And, you know, there's something going on. It's unpleasant. Like
Mhm.
it was an unpleasant room. It was a dark room. None of us, you know, there was plenty of parents saying, yeah, I don't really like that room in the nursery.
Well, you're really quite lucky that you had another option, because sometimes, sometimes parents are in situations where it's either like they are very limited in other choices to make. So you were quite lucky that way.
Yes, and I am unusual because I have switched childcare quite a bit. And you know, there's plenty. I've got plenty of friends who will just started them in the one nursery and left them. And you know, but you know, I can't do that with my children. If it starts going off, I have to switch them because,
Yep.
you know, they're unhappy. So, and you know, like I said, it can take one manager. So, the next incident is quite a recent one, and it's with my younger. Well, both of my children were in that nursery, and because of the funding, so often it's financial, you know,
Hmm.
you in the UK you get a certain amount of funding. We live in England, we can't get the funding used in Wales. England won't do it. So or where we live, there was there's an incredible nursery they go to. It's amazing forest school, outdoors, Reggio inspired. And I would have loved to have put them in there full time, but I couldn't because I had 2 children in nursery, and you know, you're paying over 1,000 a month anyway
Yeah.
with the funding. And, you know, I was just getting a feel about my old nursery. Like there were just a few things, you know, the staff were very nice, but it's it's in the city centre. There's not massive outdoors. And, you know, what we've seen certainly locally to me is a lot of the small family run nurseries have been bought out by big companies, and
Hmm.
that changes things. And, you know, start to extra staff, or there's things change. Um, And you know, my youngest had been coming home, and you know, she just wanted to do dressing up and you know, hairdresser. And I was a bit like, it's not that I don't like dressing up and hairdresser, but I wanted her to be doing other stuff. You know, my eldest, my husband would be like, you know, it's really sunny, and they're sat upstairs in the room. But my eldest was due to start school, so you know, it was a month left. They wanted to stay, and we thought we'd leave it. And I was going to the forest school nursery with my eldest, who was going, and my youngest used to come. She was in the preschool, and she was really happy there. And I just was like, I'm going to have to start her. So I was kind of investigating funding. When she hit 3, it got cheaper. And, would I start her when she hits 3 towards the end of the year? So it's not so much, jigging things around. And one of the staff members said, she was sitting in the car, said, she looks really happy there. And I thought, she does. And this is more of an out there one. My youngest now switches room, and she comes home and falls asleep on me, which within 2 days. And, that's unheard of for her. She is the youngest. She wants to be part of it all. She's got massive FOMO, fear of missing out. So she'll go to bed later than my oldest. And, I go to drop off the next day, and she goes, no, mummy, I don't want to go into that room. And I was like, okay. And that was the first she mentioned. And I thought, well, maybe she's just a bit unsettled with moving up, although she'd been in that nursery from day one. And then she comes home, and I can't remember exactly what it was. She said that she was scared and there was something in the room. And my son had said the same, and I couldn't quite work out what it was. You know, and my only deduction is that there was a ghost in there or something like that. Children have imaginary friends, that there was something like that. But she was scared. She was really scared. She just was like wanting to be on me the whole time, which is not like her because she's quite independent. And she had a month left, and I thought, well, what are we going to do? It's the summer. My childcare's all sorted. I'd planned it there. The preschool that she went to was closed for the summer. I was like, look, how am I going to plan this? And we hadn't planned it properly. We'd given notice that week. We thought, look, we, with my son starting school, we didn't need the longer hours. The preschool would be fine. We wanted her outdoors a bit more, which is what the preschool had. So we gave notice that week, and had we planned it, we probably would have said, look, can you just not move her up in the room? Just leave her there until she leaves. Anyway, so I thought, look, how am I going to play this? Because I actually can't send her in. She's petrified, and I'm not going to force it to go in somewhere where she's scared. I've learnt my lesson. I'm just not doing that again. And she was really scared, and he was also saying there was something there. So I thought, well, let's see if they'll just move her back for the month. It's just a month, maybe that, I can just say, look, can she go back? She's not happy. She's saying there's something going on. I didn't express myself very well, but I was also talking to somebody who was a bit like a wall, I think is the way to put it. And they, I was incredibly anxious after what happened with my my eldest. And it totally backfired. And they did what a pre-social services referral, really rushed on a Friday without seeing me or any of us. And it was absolutely devastating. So, I kind of said to them, look, I can't send her in here because she's really scared.
So sorry, I'm just not clear. What did you say the reaction was? A social service referral?
We did a social services, pre-social services.
So I don't understand what that means.
As in, like, it was a safeguarding issue, and that they needed to check
the school.
No, with me. The children were safe at home with us. That I was crazy, psychiatrically unwell.
Okay.
Or
I see.
Criminal. So it was incredibly I felt like I was in a witch trial. I think there's no other way to say it, and what was upsetting for us was that this nursery knew us. So my children have their filtered water. I send in kind of crystals to them for the EMFs and that kind of stuff. We don't give them Calpol. We use a lot of homeopathy in them with them. And that I was very clear on things that I didn't want being done. Like, I don't like the temperature checks on the forehead. I don't think it's necessary. I know if my children are unwell, I feel it's a bit like a gun, really. And having worked as a medic for 20 plus years, I've never taken a temperature here. So I was very clear when they started that these were things, and that they knew I was different, and that my children were a bit different. And we'd been there for 2 years or so. So it was all incredibly upsetting, and we ended up having to leave because that relationship totally broke down. It was just made out that I was psychiatrically unwell. And I acknowledge that I didn't explain it well. The issue can be is when you're quite intuitive, when somebody how they're responding to you energetically as well. And
Mhm.
I got no, it was a Friday, I didn't get any answers. This was my childcare for the summer. I wasn't really given any clear stuff. Um, and yeah, it was upsetting and distressing. And both of my children were hugely traumatized by that. And my daughter, for like 2, 3 weeks afterwards, was like, I'm not going to go back into that room, mummy, am I? Like, she was really scared, like, don't want to go there, mummy, really scared, really scared. Mummy, 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 like on me. She just, yeah.
So, oh, like, I'm trying to think of all of this from 2 points of view, because I can understand exactly what you're saying, and because I'm highly sensitive, so I understand sometimes also the uncomfortable feelings you can have that someone else may not pick up on, and they affect you. So I understand all that. And then I'm trying to think of it as an administrator, because I've been a school leader. Often, like, my area is early years. So
Yes.
between early years and elementary, that's kind of been my thing. And I can't say that I've ever had a similar situation to yours, especially not someone who you had a relationship with for as long as 2 years, because that's a long time with young children. But I do remember sometimes, there would be a parent whose demands um, couldn't be met. It was because when it's an institution
Yes.
and you have a number of children, it's like when, like, we look at our children, like, and they're the stars on the stage, and once they're in school, they're one of the children in the play. So so it's a different world, both for the children and for us as the parents. And so when you were talking, I was wondering, how would I have handled that? Because, like, I can't
So
imagine.
I get that. My point is, having looked after many vulnerable adults from all over the world, people who've been sexually abused, people, refugees, people who've been sexually assaulted, and I worked as a rape examiner, is don't do it over the phone. Call somebody in, see them, eyeball them. We were in on Friday, Monday. Call
Oh,
us
of
in, talk.
course, yeah.
Okay. You know what I mean? You don't do a rash thing like that on a Friday. That's actually, hugely damaging, because safeguarding is absolutely paramount. And I totally get that. And I totally acknowledge that what I was saying was crazy. And I started that off and I wasn't coming across well and I was anxious. Totally get that, because I was sleep deprived, because I had a child who hadn't slept 2, 3 nights and he was petrified. And I was clear that I wasn't going to send them in. So I totally understand it was totally out there and unusual. But, these kind of things you do face to face. You talk to the parents, you know the family, you check everyone's all right. You don't do it over the phone and a referral to that level out of the blue on a rush on a Friday, because that actually could be very dangerous in some situations.
Mm. So how did it end up, like, as far as, you still needed childcare? Obviously, they were not going to have your children back.
Well, no, I was not going to send them in.
Yeah.
Like, it was, I mean, I was told at one point that they were writing down what I was saying to pass over to management on the phone by other staff members. I wasn't going to send them in because my child felt unsafe, and I rang the other nursery, the forest school one, and was a bit upset and cried on the phone and said, look, was there any chance they could have my eldest in a bit more and have my youngest? And this was the way to deal with it. I turned up and the owner came out and met me. And she, like me, worked in healthcare, midwife, health visitor, and called me in. And she said, are you okay? And I said, no. I started crying. So the kids stayed out. I went in and I've been made to feel so ashamed and embarrassed by the way I'm taking to be in the nursery. I was scared to tell. And I said, look, in the end, I said, look, my children said there was the ghost in the room. And she's like, okay, yeah. She said that, that's not going to go anywhere, and just started them, so I was really supportive. It gave me a hug and was so like, yeah, what's the issue? Do you know what I mean? Like, I've dealt with many strange things
Yeah,
in
of course.
medicine, but I think talk to people, pick it apart, see what's going
Yeah.
on. Don't just take her on a phone call to, uh, and you've got to eyeball people. If
Yeah,
if you seriously think there's mental health issues, eyeball them. But even if there are mental health issues, even if somebody has done a criminal act, they still deserve to be treated with dignity. And I'm talking about somebody who has
yeah.
gone to prison and stuff. So
So how does it all stand now? Like, have you found a place that you're comfortable with and you're
yes, yeah,
spending
we'd
the
already
summer?
given notice. So
Yeah.
we had, we've gone, my eldest has started school. We've gone there. I mean, and I've started my eldest in a flexi school. So they're in 3 days and it's a small school, because I know that they sound a bit, they found big groups a bit much. It's not that they're on the spectrum. They just, energetically, it can be challenging if you're young with big groups and a lot of noise. So yes, the childcare that I'd had in place happened. It was just that there was a month left of that. Um, my children, there's certain family members they refuse to see because of the way that they are behavior wise, and that is has caused issues and has been
No,
challenging
of
for me. But I
course.
won't force them to see them because that's family members who are narcissists or bullies, and I think it's really important. We get told as children, well, that's your aunt, that's your uncle, but they can still be really unpleasant people, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
being exposed to that. So that's the other spectrum of it. So, I totally acknowledge that with the second nursery, I didn't express myself well, and it was coming across as crazy. But I didn't ask them to change. I just said, could you put her down for a month? And I tried to avoid getting into why. I just said, look, she's not settling. She's leaving in a month. Could you just put her down to the previous room, and that will. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
She's stayed there. It's whatever they both said that they've seen is not in there. And like I've not seen ghosts. I don't. It's not something that I particularly um whatever. But if I'm having them both telling me and they're both scared, then I have to take it seriously.
Have you thought about, alternative? I imagine you have like different alternatives for education. Like, I mean, homeschooling right now is more
Yeah.
common than I've ever seen it in my career. More people are just saying,
Opting out, yes.
yeah.
I have. Um, so there's a couple of reasons I haven't. We've gone for the flexi, and I think that's better. So I have 3 days.
Hmm.
Um, I need the time. So I need the time for me to self-regulate. As much as I love my children, I know my limits, and I know that I need 2, 3 days a week to do my own work and my creative endeavors, and that makes me a better mum, and it means that I'm more regulated. So,
Right.
I'm more emotionally available. And also for me socially, and I know that home editors do meet up, but I kind of want them to be exposed to other people and mixing. But I think it's about finding the right um the right places, and they can change. So, I've managed to get, and I'm lucky, a small flexi school. Usually it means kind of paying,
Hmm.
which is the other issue too, because it's a financial thing.
Yeah.
So, it is kind of shopping around and having a look. But, for me, I get some time with them, and they're in school too and socializing, and I'm happy. It's been challenging because I only started last week or the week before, and then we've had sitting on my own eating lunch, but those issues have been managed really well by that school.
Sometimes, not sometimes, I think all the time. Um, the most challenging times in parenting initially are when they're really young, because the responsibility that you have over their world and to protect them and to make sure, things are well in their world, it can be overwhelming. But often what happens is that as time goes on, I think that's why these like the beginnings are so critical, because that relationship that you establish with your child, regardless of everything else that's going around, that's what's going to keep getting stronger and build them up. So like you talked about, something was important to you was, that they have high emotional intelligence. And so how are you doing that? Like, how are you being able to um, develop those skills in them at this young age, and when they are in environments where they might not be the same as all the others, or there might be a little more sensitivity or something where they feel that they are a little bit different than the others. How do you keep their, emotional intelligence high, their self-esteem high?
So there's a couple of things that I do. I do affirmations with mine before bed. And that was one of the other things that was off. My daughter, I do would put them to bed and I go, you are wonderful. And try to look them in the eyes. Often they won't. You can do anything. And I'm so lucky to be your mum. And you are perfect as you are. And before the nursery thing, yes, mummy, yes, mummy, no, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't answer, wouldn't respond. Do you know what I mean? That was a
Mhm.
sure sign. And that took with her a good month to come back. So that's what I do at bedtime because bedtime is important. I get them to practice. That's one of the things I do with challenging situations. I get them to practice. So my eldest is very soft and gentle. And in one of the other nurseries, they'd come home and they said, Mummy, there's two children that are not, there's a little house in the back. There's two children, they're not letting any of us in there. I was like, okay. So I thought, what am I going to do about this? So we had a conversation and I said, well, that's not very kind. And they don't like it, but I got them to try and practice. I said, well, if you're going to go and they say no, what were you going to say? And I said, and I got them to practice. That's not very kind. That's not very kind. And then they said, well, Mummy, then they put the arms that you can't go in. And I said, we're going to say again, that's not very kind. It's for everyone. And we're going to ask a teacher to help. So, the words are important, like helping,
Yeah,
not calling a teacher.
yeah.
And then, and I had a chat with the teachers and they were very good and they had, it was all kind of sorted. So that was the other conversation we were having with school where, they were left late and they were trying to play with people and they maybe were saying, go away. Well, that's not very kind, or so I think it's practicing that. Um,
So kind
you
of
know,
establishing the vocabulary that they can use, walking them through like role modeling or not role
yeah,
modeling,
role play.
role
Yeah.
playing, yeah, the situation so they have the tools that they can use
Because
them
that's
in
it.
a
Like
situation.
it's a skill that I use. So, when you're in a challenging situation with somebody who triggers you or is a bully or whatever, it's practicing because when you're under pressure,
Mhm.
you're not going to say that. If you practice it and practice it and practice it, then it comes out as rote. Do you know what I mean? You're used to saying, no, that's not very kind. No, we don't do that because it's life. They're going to have people that are going to be trying to bully them or take over or whatever. So it's practicing that, especially if they're sensitive. Um, because they'll often kind of people please. So you have this toy, have that, and saying, no, I'm playing with it now. When I'm done, you can play with it. Or, do you know what I mean? Not just that you've
Yeah.
got to get somebody. For me, also, it's listening. So I didn't listen that first time. It took me months to take action. I didn't take it seriously. So if they ever say something to me like, I don't want to go there, I'm feeling scared, I don't want to see this person, I'm not going to force them.
Mhm.
And it's been challenging because, like I say, there's family members that I won't see that are close family members, and that's really had to change the dynamics. But the main priority is that they know that they're safe, and if they're going to tell me that they feel unsafe, that I'll take it seriously.
How do you know, how do you know when, um, like I understand whatever your child says to you, especially when you have a good relationship and communication is developed. How do you know that um what they're because when they're younger, they don't always articulate really what they're thinking. So sometimes it can be manipulative
Yes.
when because they want some result, they know that you're going to listen. How do you gauge between what reality is and support that and that fine boundary line that that's a 3-year-old who's
Yeah.
learning about negotiation.
It's big things, isn't it? So usually I have a feeling, so I have a sense. Like if I think about the nursery now, the second one, I'd been thinking about it for a while. We've been going in, going, my husband had been doing the picking up, he'd made a few comments, and we'd gone to the other nursery and she was like, I couldn't get her out,
Mm.
because it's incredible. And I'd already had a chat about starting and investigating the funding. So often the thing is, because for me, I can't verbalize. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
I just kind of know.
So you
Um,
do it intuitively.
Yeah, I do it intuitively because I'm highly sensitive too. So I often know, and they don't come back every day saying so and so this, so and so that. Like with the nursery bit where the other children weren't playing, I kind of had to. It's usually at bed, last thing at night, where it kind of comes out. Other times, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
What about like there's an interesting thing that I have found happen that I needed to be more mindful of because of being a highly sensitive person. I would sometimes overthink and put some of my oversensitivity onto the situation, and really that wasn't about my child, that was about me.
yeah.
So again, that it gets really complicated. Have you had any experience in that kind of a situation?
Yeah, so I think how it played out the second nursery was partly about me,
Mm.
and um, I don't know how I could have handled it differently. I didn't express myself well, but I don't know what other way to play it because my pack, because I don't go with, oh, this is terrible. I go with solutions. So that's
Mhm.
why I was like, look, we just go down to the other room for the month. Is it possible? It's quiet in the summer, like it's dead, because
Yeah.
most of them do term time. Could we just do that for a month? She's leaving. Is it really worth forcing her for the month to go into a room when she's going to leave anyway? That was my path of least resistance because I don't want things to blow up. I sometimes don't express myself well. I know that, and I can rub people up the wrong way. Um,
But what
I
I mean, what I mean is, like for example, the and it's a very small example, but it just really bothered me. When my son, we were in Beirut, he was in middle school, and he had gone on a few like school trips, and they're always a bit of an expense, and so that you're kind of limited. And I remember he had gone on a few, and there was one more coming up, and he wanted to go. I don't know if it was for music or sports, but for something, to one of the other Middle Eastern countries, and I said no. I mean, we had a conversation and all the things that you do, and at the time he was, oh, fine. That's it wasn't a big deal to him, but I kept that for years, years. And I remember saying it to him, like, like years later. He was in university by that time, and I said, it still bothers me, and I feel guilty because I said, no, you couldn't go. So I'm thinking, maybe you missed out on, your friends. And it was nothing to him. It really
yeah.
wasn't. So that's what I mean, kind of, when you
Okay.
are the sensitive one, sometimes like I put that on him. I had that whole, scene going on in my head for years, but it really wasn't him. It was me.
No, I get that because I'm different too. And certainly where we moved back to where I grew up isn't where I would have chosen to be. It's just circumstances. And I don't really fit. I don't have a load of friends and I don't really fit in. And so sometimes I sit and see my kids and I go, God, is this me? Or is it just because they're slightly different too? Because, like
Yeah.
my eldest doesn't so much, but he's happy and he has one or two close friends. But yeah, no, I understand that, and that's probably also partly why we're the first nursery. I felt very guilty about that for a very long time. Now I
Mhm.
know I wasn't the other one because there was another mum that moved her children, and she said the same. She was like, I feel really guilty about this because I didn't take action sooner. Um, it yeah, I get you because I am sensitive and I am different, and I'm always like, am I just projecting my things that I'm a bit
Yeah.
different to have friends here or you know are they playing with people or not? But then does it matter if they're not? If they're happy, it's one of those.
I think
Um,
it's really important too, though, for parents. So, especially when they're younger, um, I think we can beat ourselves up. We had an incident too in daycare, and we ended up pulling our son out of the daycare. And that, you analyze it, you think about, did you take all the right steps initially? Did you, you know, keep your eyes open? Did you catch all the signals? And I think it's important for us as parents. You do everything. You do your due diligence about where you're putting your children, but you know, if you miss something, like you might pick it up later, like you will pick it up because you're in tune with your child. But you know, I wish someone had said to me, it wasn't your fault. And
Yeah.
you know, he will be just fine because your family has been intact. So,
Yeah.
like, I know there's a lot of things that go on outside, the home environment. And I have seen over and over and over again, if that home environment is
Yeah.
a solid unit, no matter what it looks like, what configuration it is, even if there's just one person, if that child has that one person and feels
Yeah.
safe and connected, then
Yeah.
the rest of the world can be tumbling down, but chances are they will still be okay because they've got that environment
Yeah.
where they're safe and secure. So, if parents can take something out of all of the things that can go wrong, if they put a focus on what they can control, and what they can control is the environment that they are raising their children in when they are in their home.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I think that's a really lovely thing to hear, because you do beat yourself up.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
me sharing that second nursery story is quite a big thing because it was quite recent, and it's me being really open about me being different and my children being different. And because I was made to feel so bad and shamed
Yeah.
about it, which shocks me from somebody who's looked after people from all over, have done all sorts of things. I don't think I've ever spoken to anybody in that way because I'm just like, okay, what needs to be done? But that's a really nice thing to hear. You know, I mean, for a long time, because when I had my eldest, I had PTSD and didn't know it. I had a very bad workplace bullying, and it wasn't diagnosed. And I tried, and I was trying everything. I moved country when I was quite heavily pregnant, and I moved into terrible maternity care and a really bad birth, and I was really unwell for the beginning. You have that guilt of, I was in this bad state when my eldest was born and getting overprotective. But for me, I sit here and go, I may have been this, and they may have lived through that and COVID and me not being emotionally available for a lot of it, even though I desperately wanted, it'd been a long time. I'd really wanted it. I was really looking forward to it. Um, I have a child who goes, no, I don't want to see this person because, they put it as taking wings. They take my wings. That's
Mhm.
power to them. They disempower me. And I think my 4-year-old's doing that. And that's incredible.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
have to, I have to support them, But you also see how probably I was like that as a child. And I had a parent who just said, no, no, it's your grandparent, or no, no, it's your uncle. Just, stop being silly.
Well, I
Um,
think that's one of the wonderful things about the period of time that children are being raised in right now. There's more of an awareness of just how big the spectrum is of everyone is different. Like everyone is different. And there is more awareness of those differences, not necessarily acceptance all the time, but there's an awareness. So then you don't just think, you don't fit in, or you're too sensitive, or you think, okay, there is something here. I'm
yes.
different. It's a good time to
It
be
is,
in
it
this
is.
world.
But for those of us that are on the high sensitive or psychic or intuitive who may see or feel things, I really, I feel like had I have been different in a different way, that would have been more accepted. And like, I'll talk about this. It served me very well in my medical career. Like I remember having patients, I was working in London, they had very advanced HIV, and with dementia. And I just remember looking at them going, something's not quite right here. And, they were not for resus. And I thought, I'm just going to do a brain scan. And they'd had a brain bleed and they went for surgery. And so, sometimes some of these things you look at people and you eyeball them and you go, there's
Yeah.
something not there. And you follow that sense. But and certainly you're absolutely right. There's never been a better time. But if you're slightly different or intuitive or psychic, it can be very difficult to express that and not
Mhm.
understood. And that seems to be one of the areas or parts. Like, it's easier if you're, transitioning gender, or if you are interested in people of the same sex, as opposed to, being intuitive, psychic, high sensitive. Because sometimes I just feel things, or, and it's really, I can't explain to you why, but it's just a feeling or knowing of like, I had another patient that'd come in and everyone said, look, it's a viral meningitis. And I looked at them, I thought, I don't think this is. I can go into the medicalities of it. And I remember doing a blood test and their steroid level was low, and they'd had a steroid cream that run out, and it wasn't meningitis. Now, and it was just a thing of me going, gonna do this.
Okay,
And
so
that's
let's just take this back to parenting,
yeah,
because I think it's again, I think it's all about your home environment. So like I have different ways of thinking. They're completely different than the way I was raised as well. But like our son knows all of that. Like we talk openly about having different thoughts about different things. And like I remember when he was younger and he was on, on a baseball team, a little league baseball team, and we picked up the kids on Easter morning, and he was starting to tell them about the Easter bunny, and it's just kind of, like there is no Easter bunny in this culture. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, they're going to be, um, and so we could have that understanding that
yeah,
everyone is different and people have different beliefs, and that's fine as long as we're all, you know, respectful and kind to each other and we don't hurt anyone. It doesn't matter as long as you're, a compassionate human being, and you leave the world in a better place. So Laurie, there's something I wanted to ask before we move to the end of it. So
yes,
I wanted, when I was looking at your information, and I had
yeah,
been reading about the book, The Case of the Missing Gold Eggs, and you said
yeah,
in that book it was to help kids think big and combat
yeah,
gender stereotypes. So because gender stereotyping is just, that's one of my, pets.
yeah,
So I wanted to know, as
yes.
a parent, how are you being mindful of things like unconscious gender bias?
So it's a very big thing for me. I obviously am Asian, and sexism is a massive thing in my culture and in the family that I grew up, unfortunately, and the wider family. And it's had a massive negative impact on my life. Um, my my son is very sensitive, and very, he cry. That's how he clears. And one day he'd fall on the scooter, and there was a neighbor, old gentleman, said, "Look, come on, you're a boy, don't cry." And afterwards I was like, no, that's not true. I want you to cry if you're hurt. Um, so I'm just open. I talk to them. They ask me, and I talk. My husband's like, "You don't need to answer that," and I'm like, "No, I'm going to talk about things. People are different." And I explained what had happened in the nursery. I didn't go into too much detail, but said, this has happened, and the other nursery. And I said, I'm sorry I didn't listen to you about the other nursery. And he knows that I'm not going to force him to see those family members that
Yeah.
make him feel uncomfortable. Um, it will be interesting to see how it plays out, but I'm hoping that I'm able to maintain that, and he is able to be him, and my daughter's able to be her, and know that they are perfect as they are. Um, the book that I wrote, the first one that I published, it's I've looked after so many people who generations of drug use or abject poverty, or sexual trauma being passed down, and so many adults who weren't told as children that they were amazing, that they could do anything, and felt to be worthy, or that they were loved. And it's a really, I'm going to show you quickly. It's a funny book about a gold egg laying chicken that goes missing, and a girl who wants to be a big detective, and people don't want to employ girl detectives, so she sets up her own agency. And there's a flying boat, and a cheese loving dancing pirate, and a scary hunter. But it's a book about a girl who has a dream, and who reaches for it, who thinks big, and who's she's not like, she likes to read books and solve puzzles. She's not kind of fully made up, or social media. She's just a girl who likes to solve puzzles. She's got a younger brother. It got noisy when he was born, so she likes to get out and solve puzzles, and that's what she does.
So do you use other books to help your children understand there's different um, stereotypes that they don't need to follow about what it means to be male or female? Or is this, I mean, they're still a little bit young, so you might not have, you might not
I
have
haven't done that so
encountered.
much yet. I mean, my son will say sometimes, "Well, we're different, mummy." Do you know what I mean? So
Hmm.
I haven't so much yet. They're still young. Um, I mean, I think we'll see how it goes. I think like hopefully you're just going to know that they are them and they're loved and accepted as they are. Like, I've looked after people from all over, so I'm not very judgmental. You can pick, I've heard it all. I've been told about murders and gang warfare and all this stuff. Um, so I'm fairly unshockable. My husband is less open, but I hope that they know that they can talk to me and we'll deal with it as it comes along. But usually I just talk about things,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I think when you're aware and you've got, again, comes down to communication. So, okay, it's good. I'm trying to be mindful of your time too, and I do want to ask the last two questions. So, the first one, just for fun, what would the title be for a movie about your family life? And then what would be the movie summary or synopsis?
Okay, so my family life would be a new beginning,
Okay.
and the synopsis is that, oh, me and for my husband, we never quite belonged, didn't belong, didn't quite fit in, didn't really belong in our families. I did the medicine route, and I was very good at my job and friends, but I never quite belonged. I was different, and I have a family. Well, we're all a bit different, and we belong, and we're a unit, and it can be very messy and challenging and a bit lonely because we don't really have a community here. But I think there's a wonderful sense of belonging, and this is where I'm meant to be.
Well, I think I would watch that movie. That sounds like a good movie to me. Okay. Last questions to wrap it up. So picture yourself sharing wisdom to your child as they're entering the world of parenting themselves. What would you say when your little girl or your little boy is having their first child?
I'm going to get teary now. Enjoy it. I didn't enjoy that beginning bit so much because I wasn't in a good space, but it's absolutely wonderful. Sorry. And it just opens you up to so much. And they're so magical. Children are so magical, challenging, but magical and wonderful. And yeah, enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah, it is. They are. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some unique insights that maybe a lot of people haven't experienced yet, but maybe this conversation will help people be a little more aware and sensitive to just different ways of being with different ways of being a family, different ways of parenting. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
If you're a parent raising a boy in today's complex world, be sure to explore sonhoodcoaching.com. You'll discover expert guidance and support designed to help you unlock your full parenting potential. As Amelia Gambetti says, this job is too difficult and too beautiful to do alone. Together we can explore this adventure and discover the magic of raising boys.